Welcome to the second explainer in our series on communication, titled Nonverbal Communication. I want you to just take a second and think about the last time you walked into a really crowded room. Maybe it was a bustling party or even just the waiting room at your doctor's office, right? Now, before anyone in that room even said a single word to you, you probably already knew exactly who was having a genuinely good day, who was totally stressed out, who was brimming with confidence, and who just absolutely wanted to be left alone. So how did you know all of that in literally a split second? Well, it's because we are constantly, and I mean constantly, broadcasting our thoughts, our moods, and our feelings to the world long before we ever open our mouths. Today, we are diving really deep into what is arguably one of the most powerful and fundamental forms of human interaction. We're going to explore exactly how our body posture, our facial expressions, our physical distance, and yes, even our utter silence shape absolutely everything we do.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the idea that human beings cannot avoid communicating is an inescapable truth about human interaction. A group of famous researchers, Watzlawick, Bevan, and Jackson, made this incredible argument that behavior itself has communicative value. You literally cannot avoid communicating. Just think about it for a minute. Even if you are sitting completely silent in a corner of a room, sitting perfectly still, actively avoiding eye contact with absolutely everyone around you, well, that stillness, that silence, and that physical distance, they are speaking volumes. You are loudly, very clearly communicating that you do not want to engage. So nonverbal communication isn't just what happens when we actively decide to gesture or smile at someone. It is this continuous, unbroken stream of signals that we send out just by existing in a shared space with other people. All right, so here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll define the unspoken language. Then we'll look at its 6 specific functions, break down the anatomy of silent speech, and explore this really cool concept called proxemics. After that, we'll see how all of this plays out in real-world arenas. And finally, we'll learn how to actually overcome communication barriers. I promise you, by the end of this deep dive, you are going to have some highly practical tools for reading and projecting nonverbal cues across all of these areas. Section 1. The unspoken language. Beyond just words. Let's start by dispelling a really major myth right out of the gate here. Nonverbal cues are absolutely not just secondary background noise to our spoken language. Nonverbal communication is the entire process of sending and receiving messages without using any words. It works perfectly hand in hand with our verbal language to create complete, nuanced meaning. We're talking about your posture, your gestures, your facial expressions, and even how close you naturally stand to someone else. There was this early scholar of body movement, a researcher named Bird Wistle, and he argued that body motion is actually patterned and deeply meaningful. These movements we make, they aren't just random twitches or accidental flinches. They follow highly specific social rules and cultural expectations. It's honestly like this hidden rule book we all follow without even realizing we're doing it. Now sure, a sudden gasp of fear or a genuine belly laugh might be deeply biological in all of us humans. But the vast majority of our behaviors, like the specific way you wave to a friend, how you cross your arms when you're cold, or exactly how you nod along to a story, those are largely learned from the specific culture you grew up in. Moving right along to Section 2, 6 functions of nonverbal cues, how words and actions mix. Because verbal and nonverbal communication don't exist in a vacuum, they constantly interact in incredibly dynamic ways. And this brilliantly illustrates how those two sides of communication work together. Scholars have noted that there are 6 specific functions of nonverbal cues. Number 1, they can repeat our verbal communication. Think about when you enthusiastically nod your head up and down while simultaneously saying yes. Number 2, they complement it. Picture giving a super warm, genuine smile while verbally greeting a new neighbor. That smile directly supports and enriches the friendly meaning of your words. Number 3, they can actually substitute for words entirely. Like a simple wave across a really loud street can completely replace having to shout the word hello, or raising your hand flat toward traffic instantly signals stop without making a single sound. Number 4, we use cues to emphasize. When a really passionate speaker uses big, sweeping hand movements or punches a specific vocal tone, they're highlighting a crucial point for the audience. Number 5, they regulate interaction. We constantly use eye contact, slight head nods, and strategic little pauses to manage the flow of a conversation and silently signal when it's someone else's turn to speak. And finally, number 6, and this one is perhaps the most important, they can contradict our words. Just imagine someone standing there with an incredibly rigid posture, fists completely clenched tight, speaking in this high-strained, tense voice saying, "I am totally fine. Everything is fine."
you know immediately they are not fine. That massive tension between the spoken word and the body language is a huge part of how we interpret the actual truth, how we detect lies, or uncover hidden stress in our everyday lives.
Section 3. Anatomy of silent speech. Body, gestures, eyes, and face. Let's actually shift our focus to the specific physical channels our bodies use to broadcast these silent messages. So, two researchers, Ekman and Friesen, classified our nonverbal behaviors into 5 highly specific categories. Step 1 is emblems. Now, these are gestures that have a direct, exact verbal translation. A classic example is giving someone a thumbs up for a good job or a military salute. Step 2 is illustrators. These are movements that accompany our speech to help visually explain ideas. It's like when you use your hands to show the massive size of a fish you caught over the weekend, or when you point really vividly down the street in the direction you're talking about. Step 3 is affect displays. This is exactly how we show deep emotion, primarily through the face or body posture. Think of a wide, radiant smile to show pure joy, or a completely slumped, defeated posture when someone is feeling profound sadness. Step 4 is regulators. These are what control the flow of our daily conversations. When you're actively listening to a friend and you're gently nodding, maintaining soft eye contact, you are regulating the conversation by silently encouraging them to keep going. And then there's step 5, which I find absolutely fascinating: adapters. Adapters are these self-touching or object-touching behaviors that are usually associated with tension, anxiety, or just pure habit. Think about tapping your fingers nervously on a desk right before a tough exam, or maybe playing with a pen during a really stressful meeting, or adjusting your collar when you suddenly feel put on the spot. The crazy thing is, we all do it, and we do it almost entirely unconsciously.
But hey, before we go any further, we absolutely have to talk about culture. Just notice the stark contrast on the screen here. On the left side, direct eye contact and a firm gesture, like a thumbs up, might mean confidence, respect, and total approval in one culture. It shows that you're engaged and you're assured. But on the right side, those exact same behaviors might be perceived as incredibly disrespectful, intrusive, or even highly offensive in another culture. A researcher named Edward T. Hall emphatically warned about these cultural patterns. In some cultures, for instance, holding prolonged eye contact with a teacher, an elder, or a boss is seen as a sign of immense disrespect and outright defiance. Intercultural communication requires incredible caution and empathy, simply because nonverbal expectations vary wildly across the globe. A single gesture that is overwhelmingly positive in one country can literally cause a total breakdown in communication in another.
Section 4. Proxemics and personal space, the invisible bubble. Let's move outward from the physical body itself to examine the invisible bubble of space surrounding it. This whole concept is called proxemics. It's another brilliant theory by Edward T. Hall, focusing on exactly how people use physical distance during interactions. See, the physical distance between two people having a conversation isn't just random chance. It is a highly calibrated, continuous signal of our relationship with that other person. How close we stand to someone clearly communicates our level of comfort, the power dynamics at play, and the overall formality of the situation. Think about getting into an elevator. If you walk into an empty elevator, what do? You stand right in the center, totally relaxed. But the second a stranger gets in, what happens? You instantly drift to the corners. Your body instinctively knows exactly how to manage and negotiate that shared physical space without a single word ever being exchanged between the two of you.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how Edward T. Hall categorized these distances into 4 distinct zones. First up is intimate distance. This is a very tight bubble strictly reserved for family, romantic partners, and close friends. Second is personal distance, which is that comfortable arm's-length space where we usually hold casual conversations with peers or friends. Third is social distance. This is the typical, slightly wider spacing used for professional settings, job interviews, or interactions with new acquaintances. And fourth is public distance, which is the wide-open space a public speaker deliberately puts between themselves and their audience. These zones are incredibly powerful and finely tuned in all of us. For example, imagine a teacher in a classroom. If they stand relatively close to a student, right in that personal zone, it can beautifully communicate warm support and attentive help. But if they move just a few inches too close and accidentally cross over into the student's intimate zone, the whole interaction can suddenly feel incredibly intrusive, hostile, and super uncomfortable. Navigating these invisible boundaries perfectly really is a true masterclass in nonverbal communication.
Section 5, Action in Real-World Arenas, Classrooms and Boardrooms. So, how does all of this theory actually look out in the wild? Let's check out how these cues play out in everyday, high-stakes environments.
Take a look at this brilliant comparison between education and professional life. In education, great teachers use a warm smile and an open posture to create a welcoming, psychologically safe environment for their students. They constantly scan the room for confused faces, and they use deliberate, encouraging eye contact to boost participation. Scholar Owen Hargy explains that skilled communication in this setting requires immense responsiveness to those nonverbal student signals. A great teacher knows a student desperately needs help just by noticing their slumped posture or a furrowed brow, long before that student ever raises their hand. Now, contrast that with professional life. In a high-stakes boardroom or a crucial job interview, it is all about an upright posture, a firm handshake, and balanced, steady eye contact to project unwavering competence. Sociologist Urban Goffman called this self-presentation. It's the sophisticated art of managing impressions. Think about the subtle but intense power dynamics in a boardroom. Who sits at the absolute head of the table? Who confidently takes up the most space with their posture? Who leans in when speaking to command the room? Customer service workers, on the other hand, carefully manage friendly eye contact, soft vocal tones, and open, non-threatening gestures to actively de-escalate tension with frustrated clients. So the arenas are entirely different, but the mastery of the unspoken language remains exactly the same.
Section 6. Overcoming communication barriers. The danger of mixed signals. Of course, all of this doesn't always go smoothly. It is incredibly easy for nonverbal communication to create deep and sometimes relationship-damaging misunderstandings. So the crucial point is this. When words and body language clash, listeners overwhelmingly trust the nonverbal cues over the spoken words. Researcher Albert Mehrabian argued strongly that our true attitudes and our underlying feelings are primarily communicated through vocal tone and facial cues, not our vocabulary. Like if a coworker tells you, "I'm happy to help," but at the same time they let out a heavy sigh, they sound completely irritated, and they utterly refuse to make eye contact with you while stubbornly staring at their computer monitor, are you going to believe their words or their body? People will almost always believe the body. That glaring inconsistency breeds immediate suspicion, mistrust, and confusion. To overcome these barriers, you really need a proactive strategy. First, you must read behaviors in clusters, not as isolated signals. I have to strongly warn you against the trap of mind reading based on just a single isolated gesture. If someone has their arms tightly folded across their chest, a basic textbook might tell you they are being defensive or closed off. But if you look at the entire cluster of behaviors, maybe they're shivering slightly, or maybe the office AC is absolutely blasting right above them, well, they might just be freezing cold. You always have to consider the broader context of the situation. Avoid treating nonverbal cues as some fixed mechanical code where gesture A always strictly equals emotion B. Humans are far more complex than that. Also, when you are unsure, just ask for verbal clarification. Say something simple like, "You seem a bit hesitant, is everything okay?" And above all, always remember what we talked about earlier. Cultural display rules vary greatly. Taking the real time and effort to understand the unique cultural context of the person you're speaking with is absolutely essential for true, meaningful communication. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. What is your body saying before you even open your mouth? As we've seen throughout this explainer, your words might explain your factual message, but it's your nonverbal cues that show your true attitude, your confidence, and your deepest feelings. The most effective communicators out there aren't just highly articulate with their vocabulary, they are hyper-aware of their own silent signals and the profound, invisible language of absolutely everyone around them. If you found this breakdown of the unspoken language as deeply fascinating as I did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. We have many more deep dives into the incredible science of human behavior and communication coming up very soon. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, pay close attention to those silent signals out there.